Hello, beautiful people of the internet. My name is Evie, and welcome to another album review. I have not done one of these since September. It's been 4 months, and I wish I had a good excuse as to why that is. But really, I've just been kind of lazy. But I'm back. I'm back doing album reviews. I got a really good one for you guys this time. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this review. I hope you like it. Today we are going to be reviewing the new album from Foxtails, Fawn. Foxtails are an emo band from Connecticut that describe themselves as Art Screamo. Art Screamo, huh? Yeah, put that shit in the Louvre. They formed in the mid-2010s, and while I haven't heard all of their work, I recently decided to check out their critically acclaimed sophomore record, 3, just so I could have a good idea of their sound before going into this new record. I was highly impressed by the sheer amount of hopelessness and melancholy I got from listening to it, with its gentle Midwest emo clean guitars paired with the back and forth dynamic between screaming and singing. It felt confessional and cathartic to an almost disturbing degree, and it left me very excited for this new album, Fawn. Quickly, before we get into the review, I wanted to leave a disclaimer regarding the recent allegations towards the singer of this band, Megan Cadena Fernandez. I'll flash it up on the screen now, and you can pause the video if you want to read it. So with that out of the way, let's get into the actual review. The album's opener, Ego Death, begins with some anxious guitar arpeggios that are eventually joined by a single violin, an element that is present throughout the whole record. Already you can tell that this album will present something new and different. As simple as they are, these two elements and the chord progression that they play are enough to set the tone of grandiosity and anticipation for the rest of the song. Once the drums and bass kick in and the instrumental gets itself into a groove, the pained, desperate screaming begins. The whole song is like a 2-minute crescendo, constantly building in suspense, especially because of the way the drums carry the track from section to section before a brief moment of chaos at the very end. The lyrics of the song read like a poem, with the final and, in my opinion, most moving stanza being, "Yet faith is embedded and infinite, the beauty of life is ubiquitous. The soul dies when all it can do is reminisce." I think that this song and its lyrics are beautiful, captivating, and just a great way to start off this album. At almost 5 minutes in length, the second track, Star-Crossed, is much longer than its predecessor and also more mellow. The opening bass line sets a warm tone, and the way the guitar and violins just sort of flood into the track is absolutely gorgeous. Megan's forlorn spoken vocals then come in and guide you through this blissful ocean of sound, and as soon as you get settled into this groove, the band switches up the tempo for a slightly faster part with screaming. The juxtaposition between the soft, chamber-influenced instrumental and the harsh vocals makes for one of the most emotional moments on the whole record, in my opinion. I should also mention that they sing during this part, and god damn, their voice is gorgeous. There are certain points where the track even teases the listener with breaks and drum build-ups only to return to the quiet instrumental it was doing before. Definitely a highlight on the record for me. Track 3, Ataque de Nervios, Spanish for nervous attack, brings the energy back a little bit with a faster tempo and more of a crescendo structure, much like Ego Death had. It starts out with a pretty low-key instrumental and you get more of Megan's gorgeous singing, before the drums really pick up and you enter a more angry second half where the vocals are sort of shouted, not quite screamed. Lyrically, it sounds like a really pissed-off slam poetry session, which is not a bad thing at all. The track even hits an epic violin-infused breakdown at the very end, which for an artsy indie screamo record like this, a breakdown might sound weird, but honestly it's not really a moshing kind of breakdown, it's more of a mental breakdown, if we're being honest. The fourth track, Gazelle, actually features some vicious blast beats about 1 minute in, which makes for an interesting contrast against the beginning of the song, which, much like the rest of the record so far, isn't particularly heavy or intense. What I especially love is that the violin doesn't stop during this part, but rather plays along with the drums, like this transitions well into the middle of the song where the guitars begin playing those classic dissonant post-hardcore chords. After this we have another lush, post-rock-esque build-up which ends beautifully with singing and screaming happening simultaneously, and I gotta say, I'm a sucker for that. It's one of my favorite sounds in emo and screamo and post-hardcore music. I love it. That part alone made this track a highlight for me, but aside from that, I feel like there's just a lot going on in this song, from the louder parts to the quieter parts and all the different elements happening at once. Track 5, Barbecue, is a high point of intensity on this record, starting with a driving groove of guitar, drum, and bass, with violin handling the lead melody. On top of this is a spoken word passage. I'm not really sure what the man is saying, and I haven't found any lyrics that include his words, but what the band does with this sample is really cool. After the man speaks for a while, the instrumental hits a much more aggressive tone as Megan's screams come in on top, and then it backs down a little bit for the second half of this guy's spoken word passage, before intensifying again for Megan to finish the song. It's just classic screamo in the way it builds and releases tension so effortlessly. It gives the listener room to breathe while also being powerful and cathartic as fuck. Now might be a good time to mention that I cannot praise the usage of violin enough on this record. Without it, this would be a normal, albeit well-executed screamo record, but that violin adds so much, and I love it. Sound the long song title alarm for the next track. Gallons of spiders went flying through the stratosphere. That's quite an image. Almost like a cooldown from the last track, this song begins very slowly in the rhythm section before a wave of dreamy guitar arpeggios and bittersweet violin just washes over you. It's just so warm and enveloping, and I love it. At this point in the record, you'll probably notice just how spacious this album feels. There are a lot of things going on, but never to an overwhelming degree, and I feel like this is especially apparent on this track. Even as this song gets louder and screamed vocals come in, it never loses that magic touch of serenity that it had from the beginning. It's just stunning. Following this, we have So It Goes, a melancholic interlude that's just over a minute and features only bass, piano, and violin. While the sounds coming through on this track are quite pleasing to the ear, I personally didn't feel like I needed a random instrumental interlude, especially since it doesn't really explore a mood or sonic territory that the rest of the songs don't already cover. I won't go as far as to call it filler, but I will say that perhaps this idea could have fit in better as a short section in the middle of a full song. The rest of the second half of this record contains some of its longer cuts, starting with track 8, Space Orphan, at 5 minutes in length. The first minute of the song sounds almost like a mini jam session with the violin just going off on top of the rest of the instrumental. After this, however, they pick it up with guitars as they segue into the bulk of the track. The screamed vocals come in, and lyrically this track deals with the experience of coming across an ex-friend and the thoughts that flood your head when this happens. Things like, do they even still care about you? Did they even notice you? It's left pretty vague what exactly went down between these two past friends, but it does not sound good. The middle of the track then crumbles into the start of another crescendo, and I honestly think this might be one of the best build-ups on the album. The drums continuously grow in complexity and get faster and faster until the slow and sludgy breakdown at the end of the track, where the violin gets high-pitched and dissonant in a way that's almost reminiscent of No Wave. The guitars are more thick and distorted than anything else on the record, and the way Megan's voice sounds during this part creates a very psychotic and insane feeling. It sounds so hellish and evil, and yet despite this, it fits in fine with the melancholic tone of the rest of the record. Track 9, Life is a Death Scene Princess, which may be my favorite title on the whole album, begins with some cold, dissonant guitar arpeggios. Megan's helpless spoken vocals on top of this create a feeling of existential dread, standard screamo stuff. The instrumental swells as the screamed vocals come in, followed by a softer, clean guitar section and singing before the end, where the instrumental gets intense again and the scream vocals come back. It's nothing we haven't already heard on the record, but that's certainly not a bad thing, and it's still wonderful. I also want to point out the lyric, "Momentarily alive, I wanted to apologize for what I've done or what I haven't. It's hard to decide." I could be wrong, but to me this sounds like it's about a toxic relationship where you're confused and can't figure out why your partner is angry, so you just apologize for whatever it is you did or didn't do, just so that they'll stop being angry. It's a really heartbreaking moment, and I just wanted to point it out. Track 10, Catalyst, is the album's longest song at 5 minutes and 14 seconds. It starts off with twinkly guitars and lovely violin playing, which is standard for this record at this point, but around a minute into the track, all the instruments stop, and the violin gets a solo, where 2 layers of it are played over each other, resulting in some delicious harmonies, as my girlfriend would say. This harmonization continues as the rest of the instrumental comes back in, followed by softly spoken, almost whispered vocals. The rest of the song is mostly pretty calm with occasional bursts of energy and screaming. It never gets too chaotic though, and it remains sonically diverse and interesting, especially during the build-up at the end, which introduces what sounds like a marimba, although I'm not quite sure if that's what it is. Either way, it's yet another fantastic song. The penultimate track, La Belle Indifférence, French for Beautiful Indifference, is a soft, twinkly ballad for the most part, with the lead vocals towards the beginning and middle being sung and the occasional screams being mostly backing vocals. Certain sections and time signature changes on this track almost sound influenced by jazz, of all things. I thought I was crazy for thinking that when I first heard the drum beat that kicks in around the 1 minute mark, followed by a bass groove, but then I heard it happen again a little bit after the 3 minute mark. With this second jazzy moment in particular, I was blown away by how well it transitioned into the fully screamo ending of the song, complete with a powerful call and response vocal section. Overall, this track really has everything on it that's made this record good so far. It's gorgeous, it's epic, it's progressive, and it's another highlight for me. The album's closer, Paper Tiger, begins a little differently from the rest. The dissonant guitars and sliding violin present here almost create an awkward tension, and the vocals that come in on top of this weird groove almost give this intro a sasscore vibe? Maybe not quite. What follows this, however, is maybe the most screamo part of the entire record. You get these intense buildups of tension and release, especially on the vocal end. Megan comes across as filled with both rage and sorrow, but at a certain point they stop for some gentle singing, accompanied by a more simple instrumental before returning to the screams. It all sort of builds up into one final, crushing breakdown at the very end, which, if you ask me, is a very satisfying way to finish your album. Overall, while this record isn't perfect, the sheer creativity and diversity of the ideas presented on each track definitely left me on the edge of my seat. Like all good screamo albums, it was anxious, cathartic, and filled with tension, but on top of that, the songs were incredibly well put together, the performances were tight, and really I'm just super impressed by how well the chamber elements fit into everything. The whole thing is executed so well, especially considering the fact that this is quite a shift in direction for the band. It's not rough around the edges at all. I think I'll finish by saying this. There is a reason why classic screamo bands such as Envy, City of Caterpillar, Circle Takes the Square, and Gospel have aged so well. They didn't just make screamo, they combined that sound with other genres and ideas, resulting in something memorable and unique, and I feel like that's what Foxtails is doing here. From the post-rock crescendos to the chamber elements, the dynamic shifts between loud and soft, and the heartbreaking vocals. It's amazing, and as pretentious as it is to describe yourselves as art screamo, I honestly can't think of a better term to describe this wonderful record. I'm feeling a 9 out of 10 on this one. And that's my review. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the new Foxtails record. Let me know in the comments below if you've heard this record. What do you think of it? What are your favorite songs? What should I review next? What albums are you guys enjoying so far this year, and what would you like to hear my thoughts on? Leave a like if you enjoyed, and please consider subscribing. I'm shooting for 300 subscribers by the end of March. That would be rad as hell. And just thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And I will see you in my next video, whenever or whatever that will be. I don't know, but I'll see you then. Oh yeah, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Stay hydrated.